Hello and welcome to the SBP Podcast, the voice of mobile film. I'm Susie Botello, and you're listening to episode 69. Our guest is Steven Palmer Peterson. Steve is a writer, and he made a feature-length film which was screened at the International Mobile Film Festival last April. His film was shot with an Android phone, by the way. During this episode, Steve touches on that film and his experience at our film festival. Now, Steve also co-wrote a film, which was not a mobile film, but it's been quite successful, and it's available right now on Netflix. As a member of the mobile film community, I thought we'd ask Steve to talk about his film. It's called Assimilate, and share some tips on screenwriting. Now, we know that many of you begin your filmmaking process with a story, and you put that into a screenplay. But some of you are writers who would like to succeed as screenwriters more than filmmakers. Either way, no matter what you decide, we want to share some tips with you from someone who has professional experience in the industry. Let's get to it and talk with Steve in LA. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the SBP Podcast. I have a little surprise for you, bringing back our guest. Well, it's actually not going to be a surprise because you've just heard the intro. But Steve Peterson, Steve Palmer Peterson, right, Steve?
Yeah, it's my, there's another famous Steve Peterson. So I go by Steven Palmer Peterson when I write.
Right. But speaking of writing, Steve is a writer, and he was also, not only did he write, but he directed a feature film, which we screened during our last film festival this year in 2019, as we gear up and get ready for 2020 happening in April. But I thought we'd catch up with Steve again because Steve has had a bit of success in the writing arena. And we're going to talk about that with Steve and a film that he co-wrote, which is right now playing on Netflix. But before that, I wanted to, first of all, welcome you back to the SBP podcast. You were here for episode 47 last January. How's everything going, Steve?
Oh, it's going well. Thank you, Susan.
Steve, when you came to our film festival, I know LA is really far away from San Diego.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the traffic, how far away it is.
Actually, that does depend a lot because it could take you the same time from San Diego to Florida as it can from here to LA in traffic.
Right. Or if you go at the right time at night, then it's only 1 hour and a half. So.
I know, huh?
Right.
And by the well, I was laughing with someone the other day because I was telling them about how the 5 turns into the real 5 from San Diego to the one going north. Because they both merge, and they started laughing. They're like, well, what was it before? The fake 5? I'm like, well, it's just the other 5, and then it really turns into the 5. And it's a merging thing. Steve, when you came to our film festival, share with everyone, if you don't mind, what your experience was like.
Well, I mean, it was really nice. It was what was great. It's like because, well, you hosted a really good little dinner there for all the people who were showing up, and I think all the filmmakers were there. Yeah. So, I got to meet people from around the world. I mean, there was a guy from Italy. Really got to like the Roth or David and his and his producing partner, and I can't remember her name right now, but anyway, Kimberly, right? And so and we were able to talk because they had made a feature film on a phone as well, and so we're really kind of like, all right, comparing war stories and all that sort of thing. So and everybody was just very kind of supportive of each other, and it was just really fun.
One of the best parts of this year's film festivals to me that I got to witness, because not everybody comes every single year to witness this with me. But from my perspective, it just seemed like everyone really connected during the film festival event. Like they were very supportive of each other. Yeah,
I thought so. And I mean, it's just like, you're talking to, I mean, a lot of people are making shorts because it's a little bit easier to make, especially on a phone.
Yeah.
But they're all very serious. Everybody's very serious about the craft. Everybody's, we're all talking film. We're all talking, technical details and all that. I think probably whoever it was that was down there trying to sell the
gimbals,
the gimbals for the phones made some money.
Yeah.
Made a few sales because, you look at that stuff and that works really well. And it is fun. I think that was probably part of it because I had gone to like one or two other film festivals. And a lot of times you don't really, I mean, everybody's so busy running around doing this or that, or they're not, or people are, the film's showing, but you don't see the filmmakers there, or the filmmakers are too busy talking to somebody else. So they don't really get that chance to communicate with each other. And this felt like a lot more of a social experience.
Yeah, and I kind of made it that way on purpose. I've been to film festivals myself where you don't really see, you can't even find your own team people if you happen to show up after the session for the films that you're in that category. Come on, you walk into a theater, it's all dark, and you don't see. You're just like, okay, I'll just sit here. And then when the lights come on or when our film is over, I'll hear the cheers. I'll know where they're at, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing, too, is, I have to share with our listeners, we have a very unique... Did you ever have a red carpet experience like that before?
No, that was pretty crazy. It was like a lot of fun. They were very energetic, and especially like I can't remember the name of them. The family that were all gymnasts.
Yes,
there and what they were doing,
making
us all making us all embarrassed.
Well, your entrance was right after they did their thing.
Oh, that's right. They were like, I was completely upstage. It was
yes, and you came in. Steve, I have to let our listeners know. You're sort of this quiet. I mean, you're a writer by nature, right? And a lot of writers tend to be introverts, And so, you were kind of quiet. You're just this mellow guy, And then we put you on the red carpet, and oh my God. You became the star there. I mean, I remember how people laughed because you tried to, try to make yourself better than that family. I don't think anybody could. No.
I tried and failed. I think trying and failing is underrated.
Yeah. So, but you're definitely your sense of humor is fantastic. I don't know if you do comedy on the side, but you're really good at it.
Yeah, I've written one or two comedies because when you're writing these sorts of movies on assignment, I mean, this is one thing I think that's different between, say, being a screenwriter. I think if you're like at a high level screenwriter or something like that, or if you're writing in TV, they want you to specialize. But if you're working at kind of like these more independent films and stuff like that, you write what somebody pays you to write by and large. Whereas if you're writing novels, I mean, you're very much stuck in a genre, or even more so, you're stuck with a particular character. Look at how many novel writers are writing the same character for 50 books or something along those lines. But as a screenwriter, you do get the opportunity to write a bunch of different stuff in a bunch of different genres. And sometimes it's challenging to try to figure out how to work in a new genre. But that's also a way of learning how to develop new skills, I think.
Well, one of the things that I do want to talk about is actually the screenwriting. But speaking before that, just really quick, your film, Consensus Reality, That was it 85 minutes or something like that, as well as 86 minutes?
I think it's a little bit under that right now.
Yeah.
I kept trimming it down a little bit. Yeah, so it's around 80 something minutes. I can't remember.
Yeah. And we screened that at the film festival, but that was, want to share with our listeners, they should go back and listen to episode 47 of our podcast where Steve speaks in detail about this. But you took a very complicated book, and I know that you basically rewrote that book into a screenplay format. What was the name of that book again?
The name of the book is Memoirs of My Nervous Illness, or Memoir of My Nervous Illness by Daniel Paul Schreiber. It's written by a man who was suffering from schizophrenia, an Austrian man suffering from schizophrenia in the 1890s. I'm not exactly sure when. So I mean, he's just writing down an account of his own experiences, and he, of course, and it's like a fantasy novel to a certain degree. However, he believes every single thing he writes inside of it. So what I was doing more than anything is trying to take the metaphysics that is being built out of that worldview, out of this worldview of you're hearing voices and you're believing things and you're having sort of delusions, and turn that into a story. And then, just very kind of just throw you into the middle of it. And, you're not getting an explanation, or the audience is not getting an explanation for what's going on here. They're just kind of experiencing the same thing that somebody in that situation would be experiencing.
And you had some actors, Garrett Richmond and Christina Toth and, let me see.
Gopal Devan.
They were really good actors as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of the advantages of just casting or shooting and casting in New York, because none of those three were in the Screen Actors Guild at the time, because they're pretty young, not necessarily really young, but they're doing a lot of stage work, and that means they're not in it. But, I put out a casting call, and hundreds of people applied for many of the roles. And so, you have a very deep pool to choose from, and people who are very serious about the craft and willing to also go out there and film in pretty rough conditions, because, we don't have any trailers or anything like that. We're just parking somewhere on the street and shooting something.
Yeah. No, and I was actually, every time I've worked on a film, right? And these are not Hollywood films or anything like that. I'm not trying to upscale you in any sense of the word, but I'm always surprised at the number of actors that come to the casting calls, even some well-known actors.
Right. No, I mean, everybody wants to work. I mean, that's the way it is, especially if you're in the area. So I think even if are these films that you're making in around San Diego?
Yeah.
Because I think even San Diego, then you'll get people who are, they're in Los Angeles. Maybe they've been in television, maybe they've been in some movies, but they're not working 52 weeks a year. And if you're not working, you want to go down and practice your craft, especially if you like the role or you think it's kind of an interesting story or something like that. A lot of people are willing to take a chance.
I've also some of the writers and directors have also done some of the casting calls closer to LA, just so that they can attract audiences, not audiences, but actors from both areas, because we are literally so close to each other. There are many actors there that will work here, and there are many actors that live here that do a lot of work.
Commute to the LA, right.
Yep. And some people are just used to it, So yeah, that's really interesting. Your film, I mean, right now we just have the trailer available. At some point you'll have it on something.
Actually, no, I have it. I do have it online. I haven't announced it on Facebook yet, though. I have announced it on Twitter and its own website. Consensus of Reality is available on Amazon. It's available on Amazon Video on Demand, and it's available on Amazon Prime. So you can rent it, buy it, or if you already have an Amazon Prime account, you can watch it for free. So it's there, and it's obviously not a big film. We don't have big advertising or something like that, but we've, got a review at least so far. And the person seemed to have the right reaction to it. So
that's awesome. That is awesome. Because you got one review and they gave you a good, that's amazing. We'll share the link here on
that'd be great.
on the notes for you. Of course, it's the least we could do for taking your time in the middle of writing that you're doing right now. Is it okay that you can share a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Yeah, just a little bit. It's like, I mean, this is assignment work, so I write a few of these little television movies and stuff like that, or do rewrites, or do a little bit of revision stuff. So I'm working with a couple companies right now, and we'll see if anything ever happens with this stuff. I mean, usually these movies do get made, but they want to be able to announce them. So
yeah. Well, the entertainment industry, it's all based on. There's a lot of you can't talk about this yet. No. There's a lot of announcements.
Right. Well, the companies are the ones that want to be in charge of that.
Yeah, of course. That's I've done I don't know how many panels type things years now. I can't remember. Not like I've done 17 or anything like that, but I just can't remember. So I'd rather not say. But every single time it's like you can't let anyone know that you're doing your thing until, and they're huge on that. I mean, huge. They make the news if somebody.
Well, it's true, especially on the bigger films. But even on smaller films, it's still like, everybody has to go. I mean, small films still have their little distribution network that they got to work with. So.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of leads me into this film that is on Netflix right now, which everybody can watch, and I hope you do. I've watched it, and I am personally a fan. And the cool thing about it is like, well, oh my God, I know Steve. He was at our film festival. He made a mobile film, and that's pretty incredible for me, and I'm sure it will be to our listeners. Talk about your film, Assimilate.
Yeah, so Assimilate is not a mobile film. We spent a lot more money on that one. It was nice. We flew out. I mean, this is nice because I had my co-writer, John Murlowski, was also the director and also producer on the film. And I've been working with him for maybe 10 years or so. And so we had come up with his ideas. Or a lot of times I'll just run ideas past him and then we'll kind of work on stuff. And, we've had a few ideas for horror films and so forth. And we've never been able to get them off the ground, but we finally hooked up with somebody that John knows, a guy, Bill Fay, who had been a producer on huge movies. He'd been on 300 and The Patriot with Mel Gibson and all this kind of stuff. Back when, he was working for a big studio. He was not Heath Ledger. I don't think he worked with Heath Ledger. He worked with
I saw The Patriot. The Patriot with Mel Gibson.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Heath Ledger was in that, wasn't he? I was thinking more about Mel Gibson, but yeah, Heath Ledger plays a younger guy.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I think he'd been on a Superman movie, too, some other stuff. So, anyway, he had worked with he had worked with Legendary or Warner Brothers, whatever the company was behind it, for a long time. And then he retired from them and he started up his own little production company. And so we were I think we were the second movie he made out of that little production company. And he, it's even with somebody like him who's able to go in and talk to financiers and so forth because of his pedigree, it still takes a while to set anything up. Right, because it's a big gamble whenever you make a small film. But nonetheless, got the money for it. And then we went down to Mississippi and spent a month there and shot it. And it was fun because, you're there kind of immersed in the filmmaking itself because you're on location. You're basically working 6 days a week. Well, I think we were only working 5 days a week maybe. But anyway, you're working long hours and you're surrounded by the other people who are also working on the film. So you're just kind of living that life for a little while.
How many weeks did you do the production?
I think we did 4 weeks of production, maybe a little bit more. I mean, I don't know if we ran out of some days. I know, actually, I remember, we were originally planning to shoot some stuff over a course of 2 days, but then it was going to rain, and it was these big outdoor scenes. So we had a big bonfire in this big outdoor scene, and we said, okay, well, when it starts raining really hard, that's going to go away, and then our movie's going to be ruined. So we got to shoot this stuff really fast tonight and then get it done with. And so we just went gangbusters on that.
Wow, and I know which scene you're talking about. There's a lot of people in that scene.
Yeah. Actually, that was one really nice thing because, for these for a bigger movie like that, usually you go out of state, you go to some place that has a tax credit of some sort, so that the production can get some money back. But also a big advantage is when we went to this town that's called Kosciuszko, Mississippi, and they had said, okay, we'll let you use our town square to film this scene. and they gave it to us for free, right?
Nice.
They just like, oh, they're happy to have a film crew there, because it's not like it's not like Los Angeles where everybody's like tired of seeing movie crews around and they want you to pay them. No, they were really excited to be there. And then they also put out some sort of call where everybody from around the countryside was able to come in and they could be an extra, and just the crew was there, or the accounting was there, and cutting them all checks at the end of the day, as long as they just walked around and kind of like followed orders a little bit. Kind of give them, I think what we do is you give them a bit of a wardrobe suggestion, so they'll show up and look kind of appropriate for the scene that we're shooting. But then it's like a whole bunch of people showed up. And one of the other things is, like, because we had this one of our actors is the guy playing Randy is Caleb Worthy, and he had been in Austin and Alley, which is a very successful, I think, Disney Channel show. Yeah. Anyway, so he had a lot of fans, and they would always be asking him for autographs. And after he shot that day, and he was actually done a little bit earlier, there must have been like 100 families there with their kids that signed up, and he went over there and he took selfies with all of them. So Aww. He was like a real trooper, right?
Yeah, that you had a young, for the most part, you had a young audience.
Right.
I mean, and then you had like the guy that plays the sheriff. He also, I mean, he's older now, but he was one of the young stars back in the Paul Walker days, as I call it.
Right. Yeah. He was quite good. He was like, especially when we brought him on set, because he had a little bit more experience. And our main cast is these 3 actors who are playing in their teens, but they're all very young actors. I mean, even though they had a lot of experience, right? So Caleb had been on a TV show for a while, and then Joel had been, of course, in Super 8, which is a big movie back in the day.
Yeah.
And then Andy Matichak hadn't actually been in very much at all. I think she'd been in like a couple small roles. Now though she's in Halloween and Halloween 2 and Halloween 3 coming up. So she really, I mean, we really got lucky with her, because now she's like famous and helping drive our film. But
nice.
Anyway,
that's always good, because then people always look back to just the film that they did before they really hit it big.
Well, she was great. I mean, it was great. It was like it's great seeing all of them working together, because it'd be very professional. It'd be talking about the scene coming up, but also when we had, and oh man, I feel terrible. I can't remember the name of the actor who played. Actually, he's a deputy.
Cam. I'm looking at him right now. Cam. I don't know how to pronounce. I'm just gonna hack his name. I'm so sorry if he happens to listen to this. Cam. Gigident?
Oh, Gigident. Yeah. Okay. So, I don't remember, but one of the things I liked about him is he has this very loose acting style, and so he would be more willing to sit there and kind of, I mean, you hear it. I'm not an actor, but you'll hear actors say that acting is reacting, and he'd be very much in the scene, and so when he'd be feeding off our young actors, and our young actors are very professional, but they'd be going inside there and they're very, they're sticking to the script, and they're they like the parts, and and they're doing a great job with it. But then when they were acting opposite him, you could just see them loosen up. And that's because his experience, right? Because he's been around maybe about 10 years longer doing it, and he's also older, right? I think that's just a little bit of age, and so and then later on you get to see the younger actors would also like, oh, okay, well, look, I can be a little bit more wild or a little bit more experimental in these takes, and so I think that was an advantage about having bringing Cam in, and I like every scene he was in, so that was great too.
That's amazing. The acting on this film, I'm always, I think the acting is a big part of the storytelling, because you can have a great story, and if you don't have good actors to play those characters, it can really hurt. But let's talk about. Unless you have some really cool inside stories, let's talk about the screen writing part of this for our listeners, so that they can exercise their right to write.
That's right. Uh-huh.
what would your advice be for mobile filmmakers? And I know we try to inspire just anybody. Like you saw in our film festival, we had people that were older, right. In their 70s and such, and then you have younger people who are in their teens, and everybody in between, and then there's people who are professionals, semi-professionals, and then you have people that have never. This was their first film, but even if you're making a short film, but at least for a feature film, what would your advice be on writing?
Well, one thing I guess, one lesson I've learned the hard way is know your ending before you start. And that I'd get enamored with, I'd have this really cool first act with lots of interesting questions and then interesting twists. And I'd actually be able to carry it up through the second act, but I wouldn't know how to end it. Right. And so then the screenplay, then I'll figure out some sort of half-assed ending. And it's all right, no, it never works. And so I've still got one or two screenplays that I really like 60 pages of it, but 60 pages isn't a movie. So there you go. Right. So now it's okay, I make sure I have an ending before I go in. I think probably, there's also a little bit difference. I think if you're planning for a mobile film, then you probably know that you're going to shoot it and you know that you're going to be able to shoot it. Right. Yeah. So, obviously part of the writing there would just be okay, well, what resources do I have? Because I'm going to write my story building those sorts of resources. If you're living in an area with a nice forest, if you're living in, New Jersey and you're next to the Pine Barrens and you shoot the Blair Witch Project, right? That's what they had available to them. And then if you can you want to use the assets you have. And it's also sort of worthwhile sometimes to have those constraints on you because that's where you learn how to be experimental. But also I think there's a lot of times if you're just a writer and you're writing a screenplay on spec and you're hoping somebody else will make it, well, who knows if it'll get made. But if you are doing a mobile film, well, it's probably going to get made, right? It's all up to you, right? So that means that you're going to need to take everything a lot more seriously. And that's going to be a lot of rewriting, a lot of thinking about structure. What's the overall plot? How do you keep it moving? How do you sustain interest? And that's largely based on structure. Obviously, people will enjoy the dialogue and enjoy the characterization, but at the end of the day, it's kind of just like when you're reading a mystery novel or a thriller novel and you want people to turn the next page. How do you keep them doing that in the version of the movie?
And it's about 1 page per minute, right, for the most part?
Yeah, for a screenplay. So, yeah, and I think also probably for a mobile film, you want to be a little bit shorter, so 80 to 100 pages, because I think that's about a good timeline for it. Obviously, you're not going to be making these 120-minute, epics. You could obviously because you're not spending the same amount of money per day as a big production, but it starts to get most of the smaller films, the smaller independent films I've seen have been kind of a little bit on the shorter side.
Yeah, we were. It's one of the, what should I say? Some of the advice that some mobile filmmakers got in our film festival before this one in 2018 was that for distribution, they like 90 minutes.
Yeah. I think it depends on the kind of film you do. I think, you look at, say, something I think Primer's 76 minutes.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my lower bound for it. 90 minutes is good for distribution in that it could go onto a TV channel. But it feels to me like how many of these mobile films are going to be shown on, foreign television? Exactly. Right. Also, the kind of film that you're going to have, going back again to the IMFF that we just went to, or that you just hosted. You look at Ross's film, which is, really a gritty, dark thriller. That's not showing on TV anyway, right?
Right.
But you want it to be something that's going to stand out and kind of leave an impression. So I think that's right. And since it's not going to be showing on TV, you just want it to be long enough that Netflix would take it seriously, or long enough that Amazon's actually very friendly for putting stuff on it, and that you can kind of do that yourself. As long as you jump through the right hoops. But yeah, so you just want somebody that's going to stand out. And I wouldn't worry too much about like, trying to hit 90 minutes exactly. Unless you have a movie that's going to fit very well into a model, like, say, for instance, a female in jeopardy thriller or the kind of like Hallmark Christmas movie or something like that.
Yeah. And I think the way things are happening right now, and they've been happening and changing and transforming for a number of years now, television really is, the Netflix and the online streaming of,
right.
For films. I mean, it's just what it is, right?
Right.
It's progress, and we like progress.
Right.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, one of the best, I don't know about you, I'm on LinkedIn, and the first thing that I get is people saying, I've got a screenplay I wrote. Now what? What do I do with it? How can I get someone to make it for me? What would your advice be for that?
If you haven't, probably the best advice for a starting screenwriter is the Nicholl Fellowship. That's Nicholl. I think it's 2 L's. So I'm not sure if it's 1 L. So yeah, the Nicholl Fellowship is put up by the same company or the Academy, which does the Academy Awards. And if you do well in that, you'll get managers, you'll get agents, you'll get people getting interested in your movie. And other than that, that contest is head and shoulders above every single other contest. And after you make a couple sales, or if you make a little bit too much money, you're no longer eligible for it. So do it while you're a young writer, right? Because you want to take advantage of that. After that, what you do is you send query letters, and that's all I knew how to do. And it's, it's not a good way to do it, but there's no other option.
When you send those letters, so when I was studying this stuff, I remember the instructor saying, if you make one single typo, if you, on your formatting of your screenplay, if it's one little bit this way or that way, if you don't use the same font, the correct font, all this stuff, you just lost your opportunity because they won't even read it past that. I think things have changed, though, a little bit, haven't they?
Well, I would think if you look at, say, like Tarantino's screenplays, there's some kind of questionable typos inside of them, right? So, but nobody cares, right? I think probably typos would be like, it depends on how bad it is, how egregious it is. Also, there are the typos that look like typos and the typos that look like you don't know the difference between there and there.
Well, yeah,
right?
but you can tell those apart for the most part, yeah.
Right, but I think also as far as the formatting goes, the formatting would have been more of an issue, say 20 years ago when you were typing it up on a typewriter or something like that. But now there's enough software out there. There's Final Draft, which costs a little bit of money, Fade In, which costs less money. There's some free versions of the software, and you can just let the software do the formatting for you, and then you just don't worry about it. Don't touch it. Use whatever they're using. And there is a sense that when a reader reads a screenplay, they want it to look like a screenplay. If it doesn't look like a screenplay, then you're going to get a negative reaction right away. Yeah. And that means, slug lines can be the right length. So not huge giant blocks of text, not huge giant. Well, you can have a few, I think, long monologues, but, just kind of short, brief descriptions and very sort of writing that keeps you moving through the script.
And the descriptions, by the way, like setting up the scenes and things like that. Some people turn it into a book.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. I think sometimes they'll be a little bit forgiving of that, but and you sit there. The best thing to do always is just to go out and read some screenplays from, I think, recent movies. Yeah. Don't read. Because if you're an aspiring screenwriter, you probably read Goldman's book, which is the first one. It was Adventures in the Screen Trade. And actually, he has a whole copy, or at least part of the copy of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid at the end of the book, so you can see what a screenplay looks like. And it still reads pretty modern because it's very lean. But nonetheless, I think, looking at a screenplay from the 1970s isn't necessarily going to show you how people expect, or what people expect from a screenplay nowadays.
Yeah, I think in form of structure for filmmaking and character development and things like that, those are good. But yeah, I think for formatting, you're probably right. And also, the whole thing of, I mean, do you still mail in a screenplay?
No, it's all PDF now.
That's what I thought.
Actually, I started fairly late, so. But like maybe 14 years ago, up to about 12 years ago, yeah, you were still mailing stuff.
Yeah.
And then you see the transition as all the iPads came out. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants a script. Everybody wants a PDF now.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would. I mean, well, I'm always thinking about paper. I don't like printing so much myself. I just I think that's kind of wasteful, but that doesn't mean
the producers have to carry them, or their assistants do.
Gosh,
right?
yeah.
Like tons of that stuff, right?
I mean, we're talking about. I mean, in my mentality, in a way, I am kind of a minimalist in a lot of things. But we're talking about the old days when they used to have to send reels, for film festivals.
Right.
And nowadays, I'm like, I think with your film, depending on the size of the file, it's
right.
like bring a USB just in case, or send it in,
right.
just in case I'll ask for that. But if I can download it, I'll download it,
Right.
And that's so much easier. I mean, filmmakers nowadays have it so easy compared to, even 8 years ago.
Yeah, I think even so. I mean, just because because data transmission is like, okay, like you said, 8 years ago, transmitting a few gigabytes would be like, all right, this is like, okay, I have to do that overnight. Now it's like, all right, in actual movies, Vimeo sort of like, okay, most of your movies on there are maybe like less than 5 gigabytes, and you can download that in minutes.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, now even submitting films, with platforms like the one that we use, gonna have to give them a shout out here to Film Freeway.
Right.
Because they make it easy for, every year, some filmmakers say, well, here, I grab it from Dropbox or something. I'm like, no. Also, the understanding is that our judges, the judging panel, they watch and rate the films on Film Freeway, not, all over the internet.
Yeah. I think it also it allows it to be a lot more systematic and more organized and structured and stuff. So I think that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you do want that. You do want everything as structured as possible, especially, as the years go by, that you want to be able to look back at the different films and that you've had and the history of it. When you're writing films now, what it comes down to is, like you were talking about with your film Assimilate and your co-writer, John Murlowski. Would you recommend to a lot of writers? I mean, how do you partner up with directors like that and writers and other writers so that you can get to know people in the business?
Well, for instance, for John Murlowski, he had read. I basically queried him, and he read another horror film I wrote ways back, and we tried to get that made, but we couldn't get that one set up. But then he needed somebody to write another screenplay. He was had to turn into a movie, and he was busy with something else, so he just said, okay, do you want to do it? And then after that, I just kept writing stuff for him. So I mean, that's a lot of what it is. I think particularly in this business is like you work with them, and then the people that like you, or the people that like what you're doing, just work with you over and over and over again. So
I think it has a lot to do with
other people, right?
I think it has to. Well, no, I was going to say it has to do with your integrity as a person too. That they would trust you. Not just like you because you tell good jokes type thing.
Right. No. I mean, but it's about like the script, right? They have to like enjoy. Like, all right, I think you're a good writer. That's why I'm going to keep hiring you or trying to work with you. But also, I mean, then they'll hook you up with other people. So, via John, he works a lot with a line producer, this guy Tom Shell, and Tom Shell has gone on to produce his own films and direct his own films. So I did some writing for him, and we haven't gotten that movie set up, but hopefully sometime. But then Tom Shell hooked me up with somebody else, this guy, Adisa. And Adisa had a screenplay, and he wanted a rewrite on it. So I went and talked with him, and then I did a rewrite on it. And then, we liked working together, and we still trying to get that set up. As a matter of fact, we're setting that one out again. But, after I had done that, a little while later, he comes up and he says, okay, look, let's try doing another screenplay. We'll just start from scratch. And that movie turned into Skin in the Game, which has been produced and released. And he's showing it at a bunch of different festivals around. So that was that's just kind of this sort of, building your network, because people who like you or people who like working with you help you work with other people, right?
Yeah, and you just don't know who you're going to meet or when. You just have to keep your hopes up and make sure you don't miss out on too much, right? I
think there's a lot of warnings. Don't do, say, free writing and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of value in working with people, especially as a writer, because unless you're a producer as well, or unless you're doing the directing and so forth yourself, it's really, again, it's a lot easier to get a movie made when even if you're not working with a famous director, right? It's like, oh, okay, so now you got your writer and your director, and the director's an interesting person and they know how to do it, or you're working with a producer and then they're helping you set it up. It's better just having a team. And then also I think it maybe for other people who are involved feels like, oh, okay, look, they've already, this screenplay isn't just coming in naked. It's already been vetted to a certain degree.
Wow, that's amazing. What about now? Let me just try and wrap this up, because I'm really trying not to take up too much of your time, Steve.
Yeah. Well, I think we both could just sit here and talk your listeners into a coma.
Well, no, I actually believe they're getting this is really, really interesting for them. When it comes to the title of their film, and then one last thing is how to secure, who you're going to share your screenplay with.
I share it with everybody. I mean, I do not worry about people stealing your idea. I think I can't remember what the quote is, but don't worry about somebody stealing your idea. If it's any good, you'll have to jam it down their throat. It's true, right? It's like, all right. For one thing, there's so many ideas out there. I guarantee that somebody already had it, unless your idea is really just insane and bonkers. And so it's like, and insane and bonkers to the point where it's like unfilmable, right? So it's like, I just go to as many people as possible, because it's just like you're trying to throw as many hooks in the water as possible, right?
Yep.
I guess for titles, I don't know if I'm even that great at titles. So, also, our titles there's also a little bit of like, all right, your title's only a working title until it turns into a movie, and then it will probably change a couple times after that. So don't worry too much about it.
That's definitely true. When you write a script, you kind of marry your story, though. But how many times does a screenplay change between the time it's written till the time it's produced, and even during production, do you say?
Let me see here. For instance, on Assimilate, we wrote it, or I wrote a draft, and John wrote a draft. And then we went back and forth for a little while, and we finally got it to where we liked it. Then we took it to the producer, Bill Fay, and then he liked it. I don't think he had any notes for us right away, but he took it to some people he knew, the first people he was going to try to set it up with, and then they had some notes, so we did some more development on it. And then we weren't able to get it set up with them, but eventually bounced it around and got it back over to this other company. And then once we found out it was going to happen, once we started thinking like, oh, okay, we were about 6 months away and it looked like a financing was going to come into place, we said, oh, wait a minute, this movie's going to be real. It's not just like something on a piece of paper. Then John and I just sat there like, day by day, we went through every single page, every single scene, and we said, is there a way to make this better? So we got kind of like, especially like, okay, now you're spending real money on a movie. And so it's like, and it's a movie that has the possibility to do something. So, we try to just come up with some scenes. Even I think once we got to set, we didn't make very many changes on that one. When we were on location, we added this one scene early on where Joel and Andy have a conversation via Skype, and it's like just a little heartfelt sort of conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And that turned out really well. We said, okay, let's give them another character beat because we don't really see them being kind of just together talking to each other. So we added that, and that worked out pretty well. But other than that, we pretty much just shot the script. Now, that's not always the case. You know, I've been on some movies where you're rewriting stuff for tomorrow or today, right? And it's just crazy sort of situation. But usually that's because there's been some trouble in it. And usually that's when these movies I've been brought in to do rewrites on. I'm not usually most of my stuff winds up being pretty close to what we write originally.
Yeah, I was a script supervisor in a few films, and I can tell you right now, sometimes things change, and you're like, when did this change? Because you got to let your script supervisor know.
Right. And they'll tell you, like, it changed this morning.
Yeah, literally. Right. Or last night after everybody went home, we kind of sat around and drank some beers and changed, you know. You know, yeah. And those are kind of important things. But, yeah, it does happen. So, you know, I just wanted to let our listeners know, if you're writing screenplays, that don't get angry, don't get too attached, because things do happen on that. And, you know, when you're giving your script, you know, like, let's say you're not part of your production, when you sell your script, you know, you have no saying on that, right?
No. I mean, you sell your, like, who was it? Like, I can't, again, it's like all these quotes, I can't remember who said it. You sell your script like you sell a car. They decide to drive it off a cliff. That's up to them. Yeah,
exactly. Right? Exactly.
So, no, it's out of your hands. I mean, I've been lucky enough, and, you know, like, if you work with John Murlowski, I think it's a little bit more the case on these smaller productions, because they're a little bit more kind of like a family to a certain degree, is that, you know, always invite me out to set, and it's like always being a little bit more involved and talking with them. But again, that's like just because, I think it would probably be also true in larger films if it was just a situation where, because oftentimes the writer has a pretty good relationship with the producers. You've been working with the producers for years trying to get this movie made, right?
Yeah.
And if the director is also one of those guys that you've been working with for years, then you're all going to get along, right? Sometimes it might be a little bit different if the producers have brought in the director at the last minute and he's making some changes and he doesn't want you around, or something along those lines.
I don't know what the budget was for this film, because you guys had special effects on this film.
Yeah. I think we were looking about $2 million.
Yeah, that's still low budget.
Yeah, that's pretty low budget. I mean, for like a Hollywood film.
Yeah.
And it's like a little bit. I mean, it's not. It used to be. It's a pretty solid budget, or was a solid budget for a horror film for a while. Yeah. Nowadays, you're kind of seeing those movies. You're seeing horror films nowadays that are kind of like, they're either made for under $500,000 or made for over $5 million.
That's amazing.
For a long time, $2 million was, you know, I mean, Halloween was like $750,000. Of course, that was like 1970s money, but still, nonetheless, you know, John Carpenter's there making that movie for a small amount of cash. So,
yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Well, hey, do you have anything else you'd like to share with anyone? This is your time. This is your red carpet moment.
Oh, this is terrible. I haven't prepared at all. I would say like this, like the coolest thing I ever saw. I'm not too sure. It's like this would be this would be a spoiler alert. So maybe if, like, I don't know if you can hide anything, man, a spoiler alert. There's this one scene inside there where we flip the trailer. We roll a trailer. Listen, I've never seen. I'm glad you brought that up.
I don't want to tell people exactly much more because it would be a spoiler alert. But let me just say that I have never, while I was watching this, I don't normally talk out loud when I'm watching a film by myself. But I literally said, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before.
Well, I think part of the reason why is because we're a little bit lower budget than you would see on like a normal film, right? I don't know if you've ever seen like stuff in it, but so the way we had to make it was we have like this real trailer, and we go and we shoot in it, and then our production designer goes and makes a replicate. Of the trailer on a soundstage. Actually, I think it's like this big. I think they have sound stages there, but I think they use
a huge washing machine.
Right? No, it's just a box. It's just a box lying on the floor, made out of like plywood. Right? And it's all reinforced and solid. Then they paint the inside to make it look like the inside of the other thing. Put in some windows. Put in some furniture. All the furniture has all the insides taken out, so the furniture is as light as possible. Then we put a forklift under one side of the box. Lift it up. And you just lift it up far enough, and then all of a sudden, it kind of over tilts, and then all the stuff just goes rocketing off the walls and off the floor, right? And we have like every camera that we owned, all the GoPros, everything set up to take films about this. And so it's a practical effect. It's not a special effect. We're not on this giant rocker arm or something like that. Right. So that's why everything just all of a sudden slams over, and then it makes it look really authentic. And because I was there when we actually shot that, and the noise it made and everything kind of doing it, and we had our stunt people inside there, and they're all being really brave because they're inside this box with all this stuff that's going to go flying around, right? But man, that was, I mean, I don't know, seeing it on screen, it's like hard to tell because I'm always comparing it to seeing it in real life, right?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. If you can get yourself to work on a film set, even if it's for free, just do it because you learn so many things. And then there are things like this that, I mean, you may hear about it on something like this, on a podcast or, when people are talking about, behind the scenes stuff. But you get to witness some of the most epic, amazing things. I know I was working on a film and they were shooting cannonballs, during the Civil War.
Okay.
And the guys that were doing those effects, they said, they had worked at Pirates of the Caribbean and things like that. And they said, I was hanging out with them while they were preparing some things. And I said, what exactly are you using for that? For the inside of the cannonball, because they're not real cannonballs exploding.
Right.
And for the stuff that would come out. And they said that actually there were burnt bones left over from pet cemeteries, when they burn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for the ceremony. I don't know. What do you call that?
I guess a cremation, right?
The cremation, that's right. What's left over, they got some of those, and they said that those are what they typically use in a lot of films because it gives that best representation of what it would look like to have cannonballs exploding. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is fascinating. And they really do. They sit there and they come up with all these weird little ways, little fixes to make things look the way they want them to look.
Yeah, but that's not something you add into your screenplay while you're writing it.
No. You just write something and then hope it turns out well.
Yeah, exactly. You let the director and their crew figure out.
And it's like, I mean, a lot of times it's like a movie's a team effort. Production designer is going inside it. That's the same person who's sitting there deciding what this basket or the laundry basket that the dead lady is going to be in. Oh, it looks like, right?
Yeah.
Is building a mock-up of the trailer.
Yeah. They don't call it movie magic. Because it is. Basically, it's all a bunch of tricks. It's total fake. But the whole point of it is that you're so absorbed by the story, you're captivated by by everything, and the sound has a lot to do with it. In the end, it's about the entire effect of everything coming together that everybody put together for you. Right. Kind of like that Thanksgiving dinner that most of us are going to have, right?
It's true. That's right.
For all our listeners, thanks for listening to the SBP podcast. Thank you for listening to Steve. And Steve, thank you for being on the show. Short notice.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, that's great.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everybody.